Okay, so I'm going to start first by introducing our panelists, and then I'm going to ask a few questions and then open it up to questions from our audience and attendees. So today we have three wonderful alumni joining us. We're so honored to have them here. So we have Samuel Roods, and he graduated summa cum laude in 2009 in both political science and religious studies. During his time at Hartwick, he served as captain of the men's cross-country team and secretary of student senate. Following his graduation, Samuel went on to complete his master's in diplomacy and international relations at Seton Hall University. In spring 2007, he took part in American University's Washington semester program on the foreign policy track and interned with the Association for Diplomatic Studies and Training. He also attended a J-term program in South Africa with Dr. Connie Anderson. From 2014 to 2019, he has served in several positions, including government proposal analyst for Siemens, the international policy program administrator for the American National Standards Institute, and the grant and community relations manager for the Albany Damien Center. His strong leadership and agile research skills have also contributed to his success in his current role as senior policy analyst at the New York eHealth Collaborative. And then our second panelist is Rachel Griffing, and she graduated from Hartwick College in 2018 with a Bachelor of Business Administration, Political Science and Government. During her time at Hartwick, she served as president of the Student Senate and as a tutor for Mandarin Chinese and Business Administration. Rachel participated in several study abroad and study away programs, including a summer in San Francisco through the Baker-Simpson Fellowship, a semester abroad at Shanghai University in China, and several Hartwick faculty-led J-term programs in Italy, Hawaii, and Europe. Rachel currently works as a senior analyst of project management for Liberty Mutual in Seattle, Washington. And our third panelist is Matipa Mutoti, and she hails from Harare, Zimbabwe, and graduated summa cum laude in 2020 with a degree in political science and government, French, and global studies. During her time at Hartwick, Matipa played an active role in Honor Society, Model UN, and served as resident advisor, Blue Key Ambassador, and president of the Student Senate. Matipa studied French at Freiburg University in Switzerland, interned at the Foundation Orient Occident in Morocco and the United Nations in New York City, and was selected as a Baker-Simpson Entrepreneurial Fellow in San Francisco. Since graduating from Hartwick College, Matipa worked as legal assistant for the world-renowned law firm Davis Polk and Orville LLP in Washington, DC, and is now pursuing her master's in public policy at American University. Okay, so that's the introduction. So I'll start with a few questions. So our first question for panelists, any order, is can you please tell us about your study abroad and study away experiences while attending Hartwick? How did you find out about these experiences and what led you to apply? So whoever wants to go first.
All right, I'll do it. I'll break it. So hi, everyone. My name's Rachel. Yeah, so I actually was from Oneonta, and so I knew Hartwick well because my dad was a professor, so he was pretty well versed in all of the different areas. Hi, Dad. He was pretty well versed in all of the different opportunities, but I knew that staying in my hometown for college was something that wasn't really in the plans for me. So I wanted to utilize all of the different opportunities that Hartwick made available. So really just using Hartwick's liberal arts platform and all of the different variations of J-terms that they offered, or the variety of J-terms that they offered, made it pretty easy to fulfill some of my liberal arts requirements through those. So getting to do an art J-term was something that I was kind of unexpectedly I needed to do in order to be able to graduate and fulfill my requirements. But I mean, needed to is such a harsh word for being able to go to Italy and study art and architecture. So really, I just kind of explored all the different ways in which I could broaden my horizons through those courses. And that seems like such a cliche, but you get to make sure that you're getting the most out of your experience and get out of the classroom in a non-traditional way, which is exactly what I was looking for. So it was a huge all-around success.
I think for myself, like Rachel, just hearing about the multiple opportunities was something that was um, almost like overwhelming, but in an exciting way because you wanted to do everything. So I wanted to take the opportunity to go everywhere. Like was said previously, I'm originally from Zimbabwe, so having the chance to go almost anywhere in the world to me was just so amazing. And I wanted to take the opportunities to go to these various locations and hearing of people having their J-term trips. Like I remember hearing Rachel and her experience in China, and her traveling abroad made me want to have the same experiences. So you know, like being international, I have additional challenges in regards to having to get an additional visa and all of the passport processing just because I'm not American. But ultimately, the process was definitely made worth it just because of the experiences that I had in the multiple places I got to travel to. And Hartwick just made it so easy. I remember going to the Passive Center and speaking to Ryan and Got Love back then and just asking for all of the advice I could get about the opportunities to study abroad. And I just found out what fit best for me and what kind of experiences I wanted to have that would both benefit me personally, but also academically and professionally. And I found that these experiences have helped with that.
Yeah, I actually have a similar story to Rachel's. Actually, I grew up in upstate New York, about an hour and a half from Hartwick. So I hadn't really traveled internationally at all. And I don't know if Connie's in the room, but you know, word was around campus that South Africa was the gold standard of J-term trips. No offense to professors that also run J-term trips, but yeah, so I thought J-term was a great opportunity to kind of get that study abroad experience that I wanted without having to kind of take a full semester to do it. You know, I was also a student athlete, so J-term just kind of gives you that ability to do that. I also I did spend a semester at American University doing the Washington semester program. The way I got to that was I came to Hartwick undeclared, undecided major, realized after the first or second semester I wanted to specialize in political science with a focus on foreign policy and international relations. Really wanted an internship component, but I worked during the summers, so didn't have that opportunity. The American University program that I did was an intense class that met 3 days a week, all over DC, meeting with policymakers and think tanks and what have you, and had an internship component as well, 2 days a week. So it was a really great opportunity to kind of get pushed out of my comfort zone for both in DC and in definitely in South Africa. So yeah, that's kind of how I heard about them and applied to them.
Great. Thank you all so much for sharing. So for my next question, would you mind touching on maybe some of the highlights as well as a couple of like challenges that you experienced in like a couple of the programs that you've participated in?
Yeah, I'll go. I think I had a lot of experience already traveling internationally, but there's a difference, I think, between actually just traveling and visiting a place versus actually living there. So for example, I was able to, through the Emerson Scholarship, I was able to intern at the Fondation Orient Occident in Morocco. And I was lucky that I was able to speak the language, but then there was also still that cultural barrier in Morocco. They are a Muslim country, so we had to dress differently, more modestly. And then them just having access to them being taught by women, for example, was not something that they were used to. So just having that barrier was quite interesting. And then I also spent the semester in Switzerland, and I was also lucky I was able to speak the language. But then taking full-on political science courses and history courses in French, and French with the Swiss accent, I found was quite challenging, but I was able to use the resources that the university had to make my time as easy as possible. Also, Switzerland had a very different transportation system, a different trash system. For example, you couldn't throw away trash just like we do here. You had to make it separate and different, or you could get fined. So just being accustomed to the small things like that that you take for granted when you're not actually living in a place, maybe that you don't really notice when you're just visiting. So just becoming accustomed and adapting to those various locations was a challenge, but made the time worth it.
Yeah, so when I studied abroad in China, I unfortunately did not speak the language probably as fluently as Matipa did. So I took lessons, or I took courses for a few years prior to going my junior year, but that language barrier was so high. And so that was really a challenge, in addition to a lot of Eastern Asian cultures and norms. And just standard of living was very different than what I'm used to. So I remember that being kind of a hard adjustment, not really knowing, growing up in the same town for my entire childhood, and then going from into this large metropolitan area, not knowing the language and not really being able to communicate how to get somewhere. You learn very fast. So being able to order your own food was something that you learn like within the week, because you want to be able to order food and eat to survive. Standard of living was different. Like, it really made you appreciate, the accommodations that you have either at Hartwick or at home. In terms of like indoor heating, it's not normal to have constant heat during the winter, and Shanghai winters were pretty darn cold. So I remember that being challenging, but you leave with this overall sense of gratitude for where you come from, but then also you get to learn so much from the way of life over there. Like, everybody views things as a communal effort. Once the Chinese government sets out to accomplish something like an environmental goal, they accomplish it with an alarming success rate. So it kind of makes you shift and realize that there are other ways of doing things. And so it kind of makes you think a little bit. But I just remember feeling grateful for what I had, but then in addition, like trying to turn the dime and see how we could challenge our own preconceived notions about how to do things and how to get things done, or how to communicate with one another.
Yeah, just going along with that, yeah, I think it sounds cliche, but the culture shock is probably one of the biggest challenges for studying abroad. For me anyways, I went in 2008, so it was my junior year. And up until that point, focusing on international relations, I had written papers on global poverty and international development. But it wasn't until, the J-term trip where I actually witnessed it, and witnessing a country that was ravaged by the HIV and AIDS epidemic. I've really brought those experiences with me when it comes to my non-traditional career path. I worked with an organization in Albany that served people with HIV and AIDS. And it's a different kind of stigma that they live with in the US with the disease, but it's just kind of like those experiences just stay with you, and it really makes a big difference when for current students this is important, but job searching and on your resume and interviewing, being able to say that you witness these things, and that cultural sensitivity that Rachel kind of speaks to. You can write papers about it all the time, but until you actually witness it and experience it, it's kind of this abstract idea, I guess, that's out there. But yeah, also for another challenge is just for J-term anyways, is not wanting to murder your best friends after spending like 28 days just within 3 feet of each other. So just want to share that part too.
Or having the professors want to murder you. I feel like that's a big boundary. Yeah.
Yep, that's important.
Oh, yeah, so that's a great segue into my next question. So one thing that we encourage our students to do before going abroad and then after they come back is to reflect on their experiences. So like, what is an example of something that you learned about yourself while you were abroad or in a study boy program, and like how did that help or like impact your career in deciding what you want to do?
I think for me, I always kind of assumed I was adventurous, but when I went to China, I realized like I really love a routine and I loved like comfort. And so, or at least the comfort that I had known. So I had a deep appreciation for my time when I was away, but I remember like trying to strive to find that routine to really get acclimated, which is something I'm sure a lot of people experience when they're in a new place for a prolonged period of time. So I think it also helps you, and this is such a cliche, but like you really can overcome feelings of discomfort really easily if you just stick through it. Like you put yourself in these situations, and if you just leave with the goal in mind of finishing it, you'll find that you'll gain a lot more than you sacrifice. And so I realized after college, I wanted to make sure that I was still continuing to push myself and go somewhere where I haven't been before or somewhere I haven't experienced. So I sought jobs that were not necessarily close to home. And I looked for opportunities far away from home because I knew that, you know, even though the initial feelings are pretty uncomfortable and sometimes they can last longer than you think they will, you know, you have that prior experience of being able to just endure and learn a lot about yourself and others through the process. So it's a huge confidence boost and just realizing like there are so many different opportunities out there and places to go. And you can fit in and create your own routine and create comforts in pretty much any of them. So.
I think to go off of what Rachel touched on is just that ability to persevere when times get tough. I think for me, emotionally, I was well adjusted. It's just that I think situations just came up that made my time even more difficult. So, for example, before I went to Switzerland, I had some issues with my visa, and I ended up getting my visa the day that I was leaving to go to the airport. So, for anyone who's ever had to go to an embassy or get a visa anywhere, you just know how stressful that process is. I wasn't sure if I was still going to go to Switzerland, but it just all ended up working out. And I was just already imagining a life where I wasn't going to go to Switzerland when I'd already chosen classes and had roommates. So that ability to persevere definitely when times are challenging for sure is, I think, something I learned about myself. There were times I was like, oh, I'll just give up now, or times when, I don't know, things that you don't expect to happen, but that ability to persevere and push through something is, I think, something that has carried me to where I am now. And I think something that will continue to be with me until in the future. Yeah. So I think perseverance is a really good thing to have.
Yeah, I would say that, so just up front, I've changed careers about 4 times, I think, since I graduated Hartwick. And something though that I have noticed, and this is probably also just not just my study abroad, but just the Hartwick liberal arts education, is just kind of adaptability and flexibility when challenges kind of come up or you change careers. But I definitely bring elements of my semester in DC and my J term in South Africa with me almost, I would say, at every organization that I've worked at. I represented the United States for this, so it's an insane acronym, but the United States National Committee to the International Electrotechnical Commission, basically having to build international consensus around digitalization of standards writing. We were having Zoom calls with people all over the globe, and having that kind of cross-cultural, interpersonal skills is something that I definitely learned in South Africa. I'm working, like I said, for the HIV and AIDS organization in Albany. It's just the ability to kind of put yourself out of your comfort zone and out of kind of your bubble, which for me was, not having gone, there's an anecdote I tell where I went to DC And like, I didn't know how to tie a tie. So my dad just pre-tied 3 ties for me. And that's like how I did all my interviews. And, you know, it's like, you just get pushed into these things that ends up developing you as a person. And, you know, again, like I said, you just kind of bring that with you. And I've definitely done that in all of my career changes, which for some reason ended on health policy analysis. Not sure why, but that's where I'm at now.
Yeah, so all the great skills and traits that we hope that our students can also develop through study abroad, study away, and challenging themselves. Yeah, so on that note, would you mind telling us about like what you do now? What is your current career, and are there any like other skills or things that you can draw from study abroad they use in
Yeah. So currently I am a student at American University. I'm pursuing my graduate in Masters of Public Policy, as well as my JD degree. So, and after graduating college, I worked at Davis Polk and Wardwell for a little bit. And I think working in corporate law, especially, you always need to be on your toes. You always need to be able to think quickly. There's going to be long nights, long days, just people reaching out to you whenever. So I think that ability to always stay on your toes is something that has been with me since like studying abroad, especially because you always need to be aware of your surroundings. You're always on your toes with that too. So I think just that ability to also adjust as well and be, just be on the lookout for whatever is happening next and be prepared for the next unpredictable thing that will happen in the future. So I think that has helped me a lot too.
And, or do you want to go, Rachel? Go ahead.
No, go for it.
Okay. So yeah, like I mentioned, I'm a policy analyst for the New York eHealth Collaborative, which is the furthest from my my study abroad experiences. But like I said, so when I was in DC, I was on the foreign policy analysis kind of track. And I still do policy analysis. It's health policy and not foreign policy. And, you know, like I mentioned, that kind of like adaptability and flexibility is definitely because of the, you know, this, again, liberal arts education that Hartwick offered. Just really creates, you know, this well-rounded kind of skill set that you can bring with you in your career, for sure.
So currently I'm a project manager for Liberty Mutual. And so I actually, I was a business major along with political science. And so my ultimate goal when I graduated was to be able to do international business, which I find myself doing now, which is kind of cool. But I would say that, you know, in addition to all my classes and courses at Hartwick, my time abroad really definitely helped with that communication piece. A little bit on like what Matipa said, like when there's a problem that arises, you kind of just buckle down and try to address it. And if you approach that attitude, or if you use that attitude and approach a lot of your problems that you find, whether it's like the job search or, you know, your first project at a company, you'll find that, you know, the objectives come a little bit easier if you are just willing to work with others and be able to kind of mend and mold to, you know, their working style or their preferences or where they're coming from. It'll vary a ton. And so with what I do now, I work with a lot of our different international offices and try to make sure our systems, our internal systems, and just our business processes are working for them. And so that just involves asking a lot of questions. So, I mean, like a professional question asker isn't really in my job title, but I would say that that's pretty much what I spend most of my days doing, is asking questions, documenting them, and having empathy for, you know, the people that I'm trying to make this system or operation better for. So, all of which you'll definitely have or be able to practice during your time abroad or on a J term.
I kind of want to piggyback on what Rachel just said, like that. That kind of energy I think that you bring with you gets noticed. And, you know, like I can definitely say for myself that when you are down to answer questions and you know, people can start relying on you more and more, you get more and more requests for things, you get noticed in the office. And, you know, when there was recently, we lost our HIPAA compliance officer and they asked if I wanted to do it. And I just said, sure, because I'm down to do anything in the office. So, you know, it really just, you kind of, that adaptability and energy kind of, it does get noticed. And I do think that, you know, of my friends that went to Hartwick, that I'm still in touch with, like a lot of them bring that kind of drive to their careers. So.
So a couple last questions before I open it up to questions from our students and the other attendees.
Yeah, there's stuff in the chat.
Yeah, I'll get to that. But do you have any like interesting stories or things that you want to highlight, like maybe some of the people that you met, or like did you stay with the host family or any kind of good friends from abroad that maybe you want to share about?
I actually still keep up with quite a few of the people that I met either on my J term and in China. But I remember like the funniest, I feel like this is like the best party joke to tell, is on my first J term, I was doing the international relations, the EU trip with Dr. Rothbart. And I remember my friend thought he spoke French. He's like a French minor, I think. And it was like his second year, he just declared the French minor. And so he was like ordering us dinner in Paris. And he's like, oh, this is going to be really delicious. You know, beef tartare. And I guess tartare, I don't know, Matipa, is an open face sandwich, right? Okay. And so he orders that for me and I'm like, great, I can't wait. We're in Paris. This is so awesome. And then a pile of raw meat comes in front of me and I was like, what is this? And he had ordered me tartare, which was great. But I ate it, I tried it, it was good. But I just thought that was like the funniest experience because I was just a young, fresh 18-year-old, like, I'm in Paris for the first time and I get this like pile of raw meat in front of me. I was just so shell-shocked.
I think for me, some of the most amazing stories I actually heard were from my time in Morocco. So when I was in Morocco, like I said, I was working for the Fondation Orient Occident, which is a nonprofit that's kind of sponsored by the German, French, Italian, Spanish governments, as well as the UNHCR, which deals largely with refugees. So during this time, we were dealing with a lot of refugees coming largely from the Middle East, parts of Africa, who were trying to go from Morocco and swim across or jet ski across or just find their way across to Europe, across the Mediterranean. So during this time, I was able to go to Tangier, which is the most northern tip of Africa, and you can see Gibraltar and Spain just across from us. It's not more than 5 miles away. And while I was there, I literally could see people on jet skis trying to evade like the international, I think waters defense forces or whatever it was. So these people were stopped and I guess basically sent back to their countries just for trying to find a better life for themselves. So it was just crazy that while we were there, we saw people trying to get on jet skis. Sometimes they'd pay thousands of euros to try and get from Morocco to Spain. So there was one story in particular of an 18-year-old who I met, and while I was in Morocco, I was also tutoring English, as well as tutoring French for those people who spoke English but couldn't speak French. So there was one guy I spoke to, he was from Cameroon, and in Cameroon there was a civil war between the French as well as the English speakers. So he left his home, his whole family had been murdered, and he told me that he basically walked and hitchhiked all the way from Cameroon to Morocco, and now he was saving up money to go on a jet ski to go to Spain. So the last time I spoke to him, he sent me a message saying, and this was already when I left Morocco. I was back in the United States, and he sent me a message saying, it was great meeting you. I'm taking the jet ski tomorrow to try and get to Spain. And I haven't heard from him since. So it's interesting to see that people would resort to that kind of thing because of the situation that's going on in the world. But yeah, not to dampen the mood though.
I was going to say, I don't think I can follow that with anything. Yeah, I guess like something that was really cool with the Washington semester program is how many policymakers that we met with on a very frequent basis. Like I mentioned, like 3 days a week, we would be taking this metro to different embassies or think tanks or even congressional staffers. And it was just really wild because you're speaking with all these brilliant people that are writing policy and making policy, but from different perspectives. So you have like the hard right, folks that have their own opinions, but are still brilliant. And then you have, the Cuban embassy, which obviously has an agenda. So, it was just really wild to kind of hear all these pretty, strong arguments for things that you can disagree with, but it's just those perspectives I think are important, just to know that you're not in like a bubble with your ideas and your, your I guess the lens that you see the world in. But, yeah.
Thank you. So my final question is, what advice do you have for current students who are interested in making the most of their time at Hartwick and are pursuing international careers?
I would just say, like, start with a high level, and when you're looking for an international career, like, you can almost find one, at least at I work at a Fortune 100 company, so it's pretty large and well established, but there are so many different positions within that company. And so I'm sure if you're working with like a larger foundation in this day and age, there are a lot of different avenues in which you can pursue international studies or, a career in international business. It's a pretty ambiguous term. So if you have the drive and the focus to be able to like specialize in one area during your time here and just make yourself as familiar with that subject as possible, then I think you'll be able to position yourself in a way that's going to be able to snag one of those positions. Or if you get your foot into a company, nothing's static, right? Like you're able to position yourself to be able to take some opportunities within that company. I wasn't initially working in the international sector when I first started 3 years ago. I had to think about that. And so, if you express interest, if there's an opportunity, you take it. And if it works, then you continue to get more projects of the same nature. So just because you're not doing something right away out of college doesn't mean you won't do it down the line. So make sure that you equip yourself now with all the different experiences and just make sure you have that knowledge before you set out and start picking something.
Yeah, I agree completely. I've always been like a proponent that you really get out what you put in to Hartwick. Again, like I mentioned, I'm a student athlete, so studying abroad for an entire semester is not ideal. So J-term, again, it offers you that ability to do it and to put that on your resume. I guess I could speak to maybe those that are interested in applying to federal jobs because I was in that scene kind of for a little bit. But, studying abroad is huge. If it just shows this cultural sensitivity and ambition, I guess, that you would have. If you're applying to grad school, it's likewise, like I think it just shows that you're the type of individual that is open to ideas and experiences. you know, I know that's a really privileged thing to say because not everyone can afford to study abroad for a semester or even J terms. So the scholarships that are available are super important, and it's great that they exist. But yeah, try to find, you know, when you're out there, try to meet people, and you never know down the line when a LinkedIn second contact is going to be your hiring manager at your next job. So, you know, I'm a big proponent of that. I would definitely also, you know, this isn't related to study abroad, but find professional associations and try to network within those. You'll find a lot of people that are going through the same challenges as you, but also, again, like you'll find a connection that might act as a referral down the line. So, yeah.
I think just to build off what everyone else has said is just definitely, in addition to what they said, just do your research. Do your research as much as possible. There's so much out there sometimes that you don't even realize that's out there. Speak to the people in the passive center, speak to your professors. I can't tell you how many times I've spoken to my professors, and whether they're my advisors or not, just all of my professors I think that I've had have been such wonderful resources. Like I see some of them online today. They've just been amazing resources in terms of telling me what's out there, especially coming from Zimbabwe. I knew that there was so much out there here, so many opportunities, but I just didn't realize the vastness of things that you can do here. So if there are any other international students, like definitely, I know we don't have the same luxury as American students, for example, but definitely start planning ahead, start planning early. If you want to do that J-term trip, find out about the scholarships, find out about the visas that you need. They're amazing scholarships. Like I went to Morocco, not for free, but basically for free, just through the Emerson Scholarship. I was able to do research for my thesis in South Africa using the Duffy Scholarship. Like those are amazing, amazing resources that allow you to basically travel on the expense of the school. So you take advantage of those opportunities. And like I was saying, like to international students, please just make sure that you plan ahead, get advice from other international students. I'd be happy to help out anyone, build your networks, just because there's so much out there that you can do. And the options are basically limitless. So just find out what options are available to you, build your LinkedIn networks, build your professional networks, get mentors, get people who can tell you about the opportunities out here. Because like I said, like to this day, I still get amazed by some of the things that people have been able to do, or the things I was able to do, just because of the opportunities out there that make it as easy as possible for you to do. So I think that that's the main thing that I would definitely suggest to the students.
Yeah, thank you all so much for your advice, and and for touching on the scholarships. Our office, thanks to generous alumni and donors, we have like lots of funding available for students who want to participate in J-terms and international internships and research. So definitely to everyone listening, take advantage of it and talk to us. Okay, so next I'll open it up to questions. So it looks like we have one in the chat from Peter Bennett, who's the director of our Career Development Center. Yeah, so each of you speak very well. Do you think your international experience improved your communication skills?
Definitely think it helped in terms of, if you start from the baseline, I'm not like Matipa. I don't have like 3 languages that I speak extremely well. I have one, and then I'm middling in a few others. And so if you start from the baseline down up, you learn that really it's the general like message, the base core of like what you're trying to communicate that matters. A lot of the other stuff is semantic. So at least in my day-to-day, it definitely helps trying to break it down and go back to that basic of like, what am I trying to communicate? And if you add too much fluff around that, it gets lost in translation. I still have to work on it, but I mean, you practice that every single day when you're abroad. And so if you want an open-faced sandwich, you have to really make sure that you're careful about just saying that you want an open-faced sandwich and not a pile of beef tartare. So you learn those things pretty quickly, but it definitely helps, and you definitely get to practice, and you meet other people who also speak really well, and so you just kind of absorb that.
So I don't speak any foreign languages, but maybe this kind of says the kind of person I am. But when I do, the first two words I learn or phrases I learn is "I'm sorry" and "excuse me." So you know, I think that it's kind of that those communication skills develop, and you know, I've found myself since the American University semester or my J term in South Africa, just kind of being able to kind of tailor, I don't know if it's my tone or demeanor based on the room that I'm speaking to at the time. I'm also really involved in local politics here in my hometown, and it's kind of similar to that, where you have to know, you know, are you speaking to a room of like-minded individuals, maybe those that don't see the world the same way you do, and it's that ability to kind of just, you know, use language in a way that's engaging, that I think, yeah, I definitely benefited from studying abroad, being able to articulate those kinds of things.
I think for me, one thing that really helps is realizing that it's not always verbal communication. Sometimes it's like cultural acts and cultural communication almost, and that how you communicate in one place is not how you communicate in another place. Like, for example, something I had to become accustomed to in America when I first came is people want to hear your opinion. Your professor is like, what do you think? Whereas in Zimbabwe, for example, they would speak at us in classes. No one would really ask our opinions of what we truly thought about something. And that was something I had to become accustomed to as well. And that's something that I've managed to adapt to whenever I go to a different country. So for example, I've noticed like in Switzerland, they're more demure when they speak. I do speak French, but I learned French like from France, but in Switzerland, they're more demure when they speak. So even when you hear them speaking, they don't have that intonation, they don't have that almost animatedness that you'd see like French people with. So I became accustomed to that. And then in Morocco, for example, they're more respectful to their elders, for example. So you had to greet them a specific way and look at them a specific way and use a specific hand when greeting them. So I think just taking all of those different aspects into account, sometimes even if I don't have the verbiage to say something, just having those acts and adopting to their culture really makes a difference when communicating with someone and making sure that you're respectful to them. And then ultimately they're going to be respectful to you.
So Caitlin, if I could just jump in, I unfortunately have a divisional meeting I have to go to at 1:15, but first of all, thank you for arranging this. I mean, you clearly are representing the best of Hartwick. It's interesting because it just so reinforces for me the growth that happens when you get out of your comfort zone. You're a fish out of water, right? And yet you can persevere and form new relationships. And I think it's just such a tremendous experience. You both, all three of you, you present with such confidence as well. So it wasn't just your communication skills, but I just get such a strong sense of you being comfortable in your own skin. And I think that that's just really important, right? In life, right? We're inspired by confidence and people who are comfortable, you know, with themselves. And I would argue that that is another benefit of international experience and putting yourself out there. So anyway, thank you very much. This was wonderful. And I hope our paths cross again soon. Thank you very much.
Do we have any questions from our attendees in the room?
I've got to go too. I've got to teach, but I really want to thank Sam, Matipa, and Rachel. It's great to see you all again. And we miss you, but it's wonderful to see you're doing great things. And I really appreciate, like Peter, all the things you've done in this presentation. So thank you very much. And don't be a stranger. Come on back anytime.
Caitlin, since this is going to be recorded, maybe it would be good to see what they think about which J term to go, pragmatically speaking, right? So a lot of them talked about sort of getting out of your comfort zone, but it also takes a while at Hartwick to like get in the comfort zone, right? It's like what year, but it also requires some planning, right? Is there like an ideal J term, just thinking about planning to go? I mean, obviously, like Sam said too, certain athletes are gonna have different kinds of restrictions, but like all else equal, 4-year student, should there be like a target year, like this is the term I'm gonna go with?
I know for me, I was a student athlete as well, but I was a fall athlete. So I think lacrosse is in the spring, right?
I don't know.
I think it's in the spring, right? I know I was a fall athlete, so I planned mine strategically, and I planned with my coach to go spring my junior year. So I missed spring season, but ultimately I was able to like work with him and make up some of the content. And obviously I still stayed connected with my coach through and like my team through our group chats and video and whatnot. I will say that like being a Division III college, it helps with the flexibility. Like coaches, can work with you to be able to make sure that if you do want to pursue a semester long, that you absolutely can. I don't know whether the EU J term is still going on. I loved all of my J term experiences, and I'm not just saying that because one of my professors is on the call, my dad. But I will say that if there are I think there is something to be in a place for 1 month, but if there is an opportunity to go on a J term that takes you to multiple cities in that month, I think it's just like the most bang for your buck. So I remember the EU J term being really amazing. I visited 5 different countries in a month, so I was exhausted, but we got to see so much and learn so much and kind of look at this overarching framework of how the EU, like at the time, connected them all together. London's no longer in the EU, but so it was able to, you had this cohesive syllabus throughout the entire thing, but you were able to go experience a bunch of different things in just 1 month. So
Yeah, and for a J term, I went my junior year and felt like that was a pretty good timeline. By then I had kind of was starting to pull together a senior thesis ideas. So it just kind of helped feed into that. I did international relations based on the BRICS countries, South Africa being one. So it just kind of helped solidify that, I guess. For studying abroad for a semester, I don't know if others that have done this were the same. So I went spring of my sophomore year, and I realized that I was one of the younger students in the program. There was most of the students studying abroad were either juniors, or some of them were even, it was their last senior semester. I'm not sure how they managed that, but yeah, in terms of an ideal timing, trying to tie it to your senior project is worthwhile. You'll also get feedback from students your year that go on trips. So like, again, like I had heard through friends that the South Africa J term was just life-changing and great things about it through just word of mouth. But yeah, that's a good question. I think it depends on the person, but I would say, junior year is probably a good target, I guess. Yeah.
I think also with timing, I would say probably sophomore and junior year would be the best time to do these kind of things, especially more, I guess, I would say I did my J term in my sophomore year, and I went to also the EU tour, and it was mostly actually like the Eastern Europe tour, again with Professor Forster Rothbard and Professor Seeley, and we went to Hungary, the Czech Republic, Germany, and Austria, and that was absolutely amazing. So if someone can do that in their sophomore year, that would be amazing. And I'd also suggest also doing study abroad in the fall of your junior year. That's what I did, and I found that I was still able to go away, but still come back and enjoy some of my time at Hartwick as well. So that was great. But I'd also suggest that students definitely take the junior year to discover what they want to do, especially the junior year after your summer. I feel like is so important. That summer after your junior year is so vital for determining what you'd want to do. So that's when you can start doing grad school planning, whether you want to do law school or not. That's the best time to start looking at your LSAT or GRE or MCAT or whatever it is that you want to do. Definitely use that junior summer to start doing internships that are in line with what you've been planning to do this whole time, like in line with your career path. I would suggest that students definitely do internships and J-term abroad experiences. While it is great to like fulfill a requirement and have these experiences, it's even better when they're tailoring to what you'd want to do in the future or have an impact or play a part in what you'd want to do in the future as well. So definitely taking into consideration which J-term trip you do, so that maybe you do a J-term trip in your sophomore semester, and then your fall of junior year, you study abroad, your summer of junior year, you do an internship, wherever it is, and then you could even get an offer by the end of the fall, by the end of the summer of your junior year. And then by the time you graduate, you're already either in grad school or law school or med school, or have a place at a firm or whatever it is. So timing and planning is definitely important.
That also just made me think, in terms of internships, when I was at Hartwick, there wasn't really remote internships at all. So now I definitely think there are opportunities to students that can't go to a hub of foreign policy or what have you, but still have the ability to intern and kind of take advantage of that. And all you need is an internet connection. So, you know, I think that's something that's really going to be really beneficial to folks, because you're also saving on costs. I spent hundreds of dollars, maybe even thousands, commuting into Manhattan for an internship, an unpaid internship at a nonprofit. You know, it's like, but we're learning now that those things can be done remotely. And I think that's just good for students that are kind of limited mobility or transportation, or even just where they are. So.
Yeah.
So I had a question. So all of you had more than one experience abroad or off campus. And I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about the advantage of perhaps doing more than one experience, and did one experience teach you something that helped you be more successful in the ones that you had after that?
Yeah, I think I made a point. I made my schedule pretty tight. I wanted to make sure that I got the most. I came into Hartwick with like a little bit of prejudice because, like I said, I was a hometown student and it wasn't my ideal first choice. So I came in there like eyes blazing. I was like, I'm going to do this, 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 and this. So I like made this really strict schedule. And so I think I had an opportunity, like, so luckily, to be able to do something every single year, and every single one I felt like, you know, not to beat a dead horse, but I really think the most valuable ones were the ones where I was most uncomfortable. It teaches you so much about yourself, and you're able to thrive in situations where a lot of people would give up. So I think, you know, if you're afraid of your end destination, or it kind of makes you a little bit uncomfortable to be away for that long, I think that is what is going to give you the most benefit. So my China experience, while it wasn't the warmest and the fuzziest, and I don't have the cutest pictures from it, it definitely built me to who I am. And I think that would be my main recommendation, is get comfortable in the uncomfortable, because it's not going to be that bad forever. So if you can find something that's a little obscure too, it really helps you differentiate yourself going forward. So uncomfortable and obscure is my unconventional advice.
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree with Rachel on that one. I found that actually the places that I would suggest students go to are the places, if possible, that you spend a longer time in. where that's where I think you get really uncomfortable, in the place where you don't have as much guidance, for example, like on a J-term trip, or where you don't have the language ability, where you don't have when you're not, where you're not used to the culture. Definitely staying in a place for a longer time makes a difference. I found that definitely for me, my trips to Switzerland, my semester in Switzerland, as well as my summer in Morocco, I think that was really impactful because of the time that I spent there, and the fact that I had to commute by myself, and the fact that I had to speak to locals on a daily basis, and things weren't as planned as I would have liked. I think definitely having the J-term trip was a good start off, because that's when you start to figure out how things are planned, how to travel abroad, and how to look after yourself abroad with the guidance of other people. But then when you really throw yourself into the deep end and go by yourself and experience things by yourself, I think that really makes the most difference and becomes so impactful in the future.
I'm trying to think if DC was a culture shock for me, and I think it was, but I guess I would say they're both of my study away experiences. Just again, it like kind of just pushed me into the direction and the career that I ended up having. All different elements of it, whether it's, you know, the ability to speak with someone that you have nothing in common with, to listen and respond, and you know, making room for others to speak, you know, I think is a skill that I learned in both places, that, you know, I shouldn't be the only one talking in a room a lot of the time, I think is really important. And I definitely brought that away from both of my experiences. But yeah, I think it's just a net positive for anyone to take advantage of a J-term program. You know, if you're able to do it, if you can apply for the scholarship, I think you absolutely should. And it not only, you know, helps you develop your skills, but it does look really good on resumes and cover letters and in interviews to talk about it. You know, saying that you went to South Africa, I've had hiring managers say like, oh, where? You know, I did a trip there once, and, you know, in Cape Town or something, and you have that in common. So you never know how it's going to help you out.
No, there's one more thing in the chat. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Okay. Yeah, thank you all so much for your time. Do you have any final words, Director?
No, I'm so sorry. I walked in a little late. I'm the new director of Global Ed, so I haven't had a chance to meet all of you, but I'm really glad to see you and to hear about your experiences at Hartwick. And I hope I can meet you in person one of these days soon. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, can't actually see you on camera.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, that's like whatever.
Great.
There I am. Yeah, it's just and almost everyone's gone at this point, but
Okay, so yeah, this was a really great way to kick off our International Education Week at Hartwick. Later on this week, we'll have a student showcase of our Emerson scholars. They'll be talking about their virtual internships, and also we had one that was in person in San Francisco. And then see what else. We also have like multilingual karaoke and international desserts. And
then watch tomorrow, because there's a takeover of our Instagram by some of our international students.
Yeah, so you can follow us at Hartwick Global on Instagram, and
yeah,
it'll be fun.
That should be fun. Yeah.
So yeah, thank you all again so much, and hope to have you on campus again someday.
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks
It was
for
nice to meet you, Sam.
Thanks,
Nice to
all.
see you, Matipa.
Yeah, likewise.
You all.
Yeah.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.